Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday, which means it's time to talk to Ricky Williams. Ricky, how's your day? I heard it's well, I want everyone to hear about the day here.
My day's interesting. I woke up really early this morning and I went outside and I started reading. Um and I'm in one of those modes where I'm just so into what I'm reading, it feels like it's crack, you
Mm.
know? Like it's ecstasy. Um I think that's what crack feels like. But and then, and then
Wait, what are you
then I
reading?
had I'm reading a book on stellar healing. Oh my God.
Oh,
It's like it's so enriching, you know? Well, just the idea of people will talk about astrology and talk about the music of the spheres, but you can think of it in terms of when someone is talking. I know you had this experience, they're talking and you hear Mars, right? Or they're talking and you hear Venus, or you hear Saturn. And if you think about it, we can tune ourselves to Venus, right? Someone has us pissed off, right? We're tuned to Mars, okay? We see our favorite person and we get the warm and fuzzies. That feeling of the warm and fuzzies, that is Venus, you know? And so it's this idea of we can be aware of, we can feel, and to the point where we can project or send Mars energy to someone or Venus energy to someone. I have
wow.
my 3-year old, the strongest planet is Mars in the seventh house in Cancer, and tightly opposing Pluto in the first. And I can tell, right? If I come at him with Mars, right, it like he flares. If I come at him softer, it's different, right? And it's different. And just starting to be aware of, when we project energy to people, to think of it in terms of what planet is this. And is it a Venus that feels good, or is it a Venus that doesn't feel good? Is this a Mars that feels good, or is this a Mars that doesn't feel good?
Man, that's so trippy because I was thinking about you this week, and because we're kind of becoming friends through this process, and I was like, oh man, I should send Ricky this song, and then I was like, well, that's pretty Venusian if I send him a song, in text, and then I was
Yes,
like, I don't know if that's like legit, if I'm allowed to be Venusian with Ricky. I don't know what's going on. Am I allowed to send
yes,
you
one hundred
songs?
percent. Of course, but okay, this is right. This is where we could see social constructs getting in the way of our skillfulness with manipulating energy, Because if I'm projecting Venus to someone, okay, right, the nature of Venus, right, is that if I do it, it's gonna feel good to the person, right? Because even if when we think, oh, I want to share this with someone, right, it comes from this idea of this person would really appreciate this, right?
Yeah.
That's sentiment. And so sending that, right, and someone receives it, that's adding something positive to someone's life. And right, I might even say the way I think about it, okay. Um, my progressed sun is squaring my natal Venus. My progressed moon is conjunct my natal Venus. So I might say the impulse to send it was coming from me, right?
Oh,
How
well,
dare you? How dare you refuse it?
oh my God. Well, I have a natal Venus square Jupiter, so sometimes that can be a little too much. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, well,
Yes.
okay, we're going, That's What Friends Are For by Dionne Warwick. Like, You Are Not Alone by Michael Jackson. Like,
Yes.
I was just like, I
Yes.
was like, you're gonna get a whole playlist over here with my,
Yes.
the
I
sun and
need
my
them. I
Venus.
promise you. I need these playlists. They're
Um,
medicine. I'm
all
telling you
right.
that it's medicine. It's
That's it. You're,
medicine.
you're getting
Okay.
the
The
Venus
right
square
song.
Jupiter treatment.
Yes. We've all had those experiences where the right movie or the right song made a huge difference for us.
Okay. As long as I know that you're in an open marriage, that means you guys accept Venus energy from other people.
We accept Venus energy from other people. 100%. Yes.
It's why I love polyamorous people because I'm like, oh, I know I can send some Venus energy your way and I'm not gonna get yelled at. Like those like hyper monogamous couples that don't accept Venus energy from anywhere, and you're like, ah,
I know. That wouldn't work. I got
no.
too much Venus and it's with Mars, so it wouldn't work for me.
And I feel like, yeah, when your partner's had a few polycules in their day or something, like they're a lot easier because they let you have friends and stuff. But
Yeah.
okay, so I have a question for you, a
Mhm.
legit. Question. Okay, so I've been thinking we're supposed to be talking, we could talk about Venus today actually because we're going to explore the planets still. But I wanted to just loop in here with a little God for a second. I wanted to know what the African conception of God is, or what is your conception of God?
I don't think I can speak to the African conception. I'm not even sure. Well, it's difficult, right? Because there's a conception that I grew up with, but as I grew up and had my own experiences, right, it modified that conception. But I mean, but I think any conception we have has to be a modification of whatever the first one was, that primary image. And I grew up in a very religious household. My dad is still a minister. My dad's mom still a minister. My mom's mom is past but a minister. Okay, so I grew up really steeped in the church, and I have a son in the ninth house, conjunct Jupiter, um, and I loved it, and I loved it. But again, I got to the teenage years and my Mars, Venus, I have to wait until I get married. But that didn't fit my religion, and so I had to kind of let go of my adherence to Christianity. And it truly wasn't until I found depth psychology slash astrology that it all started to come back alive for me. And so the way I do astrology is very much from a religious perspective. Um, and so, if I had to give a definition of one God, it's where all the planets come from. But I like the way I interact with the planets is, to me, they're like gods and goddesses.
Mm. Yeah, I very much have a similar approach. Like the creator, whatever that is, created the planets, creation itself. And then each of the planets could be considered a god too. Like I always spell that one GAWD, like, oh my God, it's Mars, or like,
Yeah.
but, but like to me, like God doesn't have a formation of a body. Now all of us has a different God, and in fact, God is a poem, a poetic text. Like in translation theory, we have linear text and poetic text. Like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like all sign language interpreters are going to interpret that the same, pretty much. We're like 1 + 1 = 2. But if it comes down to like poetic text, like there can be 2,000 interpretations, and they're all correct. And I think God is one of those ideas or those poetic texts of like there's no one right concept of God. So I guess what you're saying though is that it's more individualized than cultural as far as what is the conception. I mean, is there? But there's got to be some
Well,
cultural
it's
difference of.
cultural. It's cultural because what I was saying is I think that whatever we're introduced to first, right, we build everything on top of that. And I think what we're introduced to first is cultural. So for the most part, my age, African Americans grew up in the church. And so they get the African American white Christian God,
Yeah.
you know, and everything else is built off of that idea, you know.
uh,
And some people, right, will scrap the idea of God altogether and say, I am spiritual, but I am not religious, which means I believe there's something, but I don't believe that there's something.
right, right. Well, I just think that's bogus. Like as when people call God he or she, I'm always like, it's they, them. Okay, I'm sorry, but God is for sure they. But it's just like I don't know. Of course, we can re-imaging God is a thing that people do when all the time. It's not like this is new, but I do think I just want to know. Like, there's got to be something in African culture about like the creator and what that looks like. I mean, I don't know. Other than the white God.
but again, and there's, right, I'm just speaking from African American and our history of Christian, right, the church, Christianity. Is for us, the first image I got was Adam and Eve. Okay, that's the image, you
Hmm.
know, and
Well,
everything, like I said, is built off of that. And the beautiful thing for me of astrology is it's helped me actually reconcile those different kinds of stories, you
hmm,
know.
yeah.
And for me, I've learned to see God in its creation, right? Because if we're saying that it's the creator, the way that we could recognize it is in its creations, and specifically the what I might call the harmony, right? The symmetry, the harmony of the creations. When you start tracking transits and progressions and you see how things show up in people's life, it's like you right, you are being aware of some form of wholeness. And to me, that's how I conceptualize God.
Well, I do think astrology is super healing along these lines because, you know, the chart knows no gender, no race, no anything. It just it gets in our chakras and our aura and our I think it gets in through the dermatomes, which you probably know what those are as a body worker. But like there I think there's electromagnetic forces at work and it's beyond all these things. And so the chart actually is very healing because it offers a spiritual, you know, paradigm that really supersedes these things. And though I just want to know how to not be a dumb noob when I'm talking about God among certain cultures. I don't want, you know?
Uh, I think this day and age, what you did is exactly the way to do it. Is you just start with asking the question. You
Huh.
know, to me, that because the truth is, if you make the assumption, most people, if they've never been asked the question, they never really thought about it. So I think the gift is to ask the question, and it forces someone to put thoughts together in a way that can give some kind of response. And I think even asking someone that question is very healing because I think, again, I think the unconscious thing is that if we can't measure it, then there must not be a God, right?
Mm. Well, well, yeah, it's interesting. We're studying the Course in Miracles at school right now. Well, we've been doing this ever since Saturn's in Pisces, but the recent one was "You are the light of the world." And it's just, you know, we are all shining this light through us. Like literally the light of the sun is extruding through us, through our chakras and things, you know. And I think you can be a person of any color, you know, skin color and be either functioning with a light aura or a kind of dense aura. And it really has nothing to do with your skin color. It has to do with how you're blocked or not, you
um,
know?
well, I kind of agree, kind of, but to me, part of it is that the skin color will provide some kind of tint to the light,
Oh, wow.
right? If you think about it, the light is inside and it's radiating outwards, right? One of the things it's radiating outwards through, right, is our skin, our culture, our skin. Even if we think of the more subtle layers of our energy bodies, right, for the light to reach there, it has to pass through those filters.
Uh,
And so we can say there's certain blockages that belong to us personally, but we can also say there's certain blockages that belong to us racially, culturally, based on gender, right? That they're kind of built in to the gender, you know? And and so the light that we are shining is shining through those things. And hopefully, I think if we own that process in that light, we can transform the things that the light shines through. But I think that requires a special kind of like self cultivation to raise your frequency to becoming that transformative force.
Interesting. It's almost like you're saying it's like shining a flashlight through, you know, white skin is going to be different than shining it through black skin, and that does change the equation. Now, is one better than the other? Absolutely not. I mean, I think we could say, you know, I don't know, like I don't.
Better. I think we can say better. The question we have to ask is better for what? Better for what? There's this movie, right? It's like the movie club homework. I didn't watch the movie, but I was sitting next to my wife on the plane. Who was watching the movie, and the movie was like, it was about like the American, like it's like a secret society for magical Negroes, you know. Um, and the idea was whenever, like in the movie, whenever white discomfort got to the place where it was about to pop, right? A magical Negro had to show up and calm the white guy down, right, and show him the way. It's a common motif in cinema. Bagger Vance, right? We have these movies where the last mile. Okay, we have these movies where we have the magical Negro that comes in and like makes everything better. Okay. So, right, and that's the sort of light, that's the sort of light that, because we can see it showing up in the movies, that is acceptable and works in our culture, right? And again, if we can raise our vibration, we can change these forms, okay? But we have to acknowledge that these forms exist, right? And they come from somewhere. So, um, right, because it's like where they say you got to meet people where they are, right? Is that we have to engage with what is here, but hopefully we can do it in a way where we can raise the vibration and keep things changing. So I do think, right, if we understand our light and where it has the greatest impact, okay, right, and we put ourselves there, right, we got a chance.
Oh man, that's true. That's a good one. You're gonna get quoted for that one. Everyone, I just want you to know, Ricky's starting to get quoted around the Moira Press school. It's like, well, Ricky says blah blah blah. Okay, well, okay. You know what I'm fighting is this whole idea because in religiosity, there's like this light and dark, and everything that's more light is better, and everything that's dark. But we fight this in astrology. Like for example, Scorpios, right? There's darkness, but we got to say there's light in darkness. So like a super goth person is still shining their light, their Scorpio ass light, right? And it happens to be black light, and so I
Yes,
think it's a
yes,
similar issue, right?
yes, I love that one. And I talk about Scorpio, I said people who can see in the dark, you
Mm.
know right?
Dark is a
And
form of light.
yes,
The
yes.
nighttime is a light.
But my new favorite thing I've been saying about about Scorpios is, I might say your deepest desires. Okay, but then I'm like, no, it doesn't quite get it. Your deepest, darkest desires, And sometimes people might go to a negative, but also we can accept that the reason the desires are so dark is because they're buried so deep, right? Because maybe they're not accepted in the light. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make them less or anything. In some ways it makes them more powerful and more necessary. And the people that can actually are sensitive to those, right, they're doing us a wonderful service by not, right, by reminding us, right, of our deepest darkest desires. Because if those deepest darkest desires don't get some play, right, they will cause havoc in our lives.
Yeah, a lot of fun happens in the dark, honestly. I'm very
Oh,
thankful for
oh,
darkness in general. Um,
oh yeah.
so well, I love your point here that it really depends on, what light we're shining and where, and um, okay, well, I'm glad I asked you, although I didn't get many answers on the African concept of God, other than
The
that
answer you got
everyone's
is just
different.
ask. Just ask.
Okay,
Just
that's the answer, is to ask.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I knew the answer already because I asked.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Yeah.
Sure did. Mhm.
All right. Okay. Well, that thread's probably dead. So let's go. Should we go on to let's talk about Venus among let's talk
Mhm.
about Venusianism.
Mhm.
Because you're okay, let's talk about the two signs. It's what, Libra and Taurus. So as we learned from you last week, there's a feminine Venusian sign, which would be Taurus, and then masculine one, which would be Libra. So let's talk about that first of all.
We could say feminine, masculine. We could say earthy and airy. Right? They
Both
kind of
true.
come from the same, place. Kind of come. This is one thing that I think gets lost in about Venus and Libra is the intelligence side of it. People talk about beauty and harmony and all that stuff, but right, I imagine a kid in school, right, and they're trying to learn something that they don't like, you
Mhm.
know, and so their way we might say they have ADD because they can't pay attention, okay, but you put something in front of that kid that feels good to them that they like, okay, they will learn it quicker. So in order to learn something, right, we have to at least appreciate or like something about what we are learning, you know and I think that Venus part of learning, right, its connection through Libra to air, I think it sometimes gets lost. Or a teacher that you like, right? Even if you don't like the subject, but you like the teacher, right? You're gonna learn in that class better than if you don't like the teacher. So this connection, again, Venus connecting to air through Libra,
Yeah. You know that you're right that that's kind of a mystifying one. It's like how can we be Venusian in a cerebral fashion, you know? And I never really thought of that, but you're bringing that up for me. And I have Venus in Libra. So it's like and I do okay, so one of the things I do on transits to this is I make commissioned art things. Like I'll make bouquets, but it's for a person's chart, which is a very cerebral action
Yeah.
is to like do all this thing, but it's showing love by I have thought about the person literally, right? So I think that's a really good point. Like Libra shows love through thinking about the person or, you know, talking to them or conversing with them. Now, a lot of musicians are Libras, and I think that is one of the most air things to do. Playing music is actually really challenging mentally. Like to actually meld musically. So okay, so what does air love look like? Let's talk about that. What's it look like to love someone in the air fashion?
First thing that comes to mind is a love letter,
Oh,
right? A love
yeah.
letter, right? Here's another kind of connected idea, right? If I'm talking to someone about the seventh house, and if you read the text, seventh house is the house of marriage. You know, I'll say seventh house is marriage. It's the moment you ask someone if to be steady, or the moment you engage to about a year after. You know, that's the seventh house. Right?
Mm.
And it's really because, but when it's there, then it's really the idea of me being with this person, you know. But about a year in, it's not the idea. Right? The idea is gone, and you've had the real life experience. Okay, right now you're into the Scorpio side of it. But it's like again, and when you write a love letter, right? It's about the idea of love. You know, I can see you and me, right? As I think about it, I can see us doing well together.
Mm. Interesting. Well, so when you say the idea, like you're talking about the concept formation of imagining you and them together in your mind. It's like melding visions of you and them. Like when I wanted to send you the friend songs or whatever, it's like I was just like I was trying in my vision. I was like, you and me are friends, and I'm gonna show you that through my playlists that I'm. You know, it's like you're trying to get them to have the concept of connection as well as you having it. You know, like.
Right?
It's sending over a thought
Right?
form.
Even the symbol, right? The scales, right? If we try to make it more literal as like a thought form, right? In the Libra mind, whatever is in Libra, right? Whenever it's activated, there's some kind of scale, right? And so it's conceptual, but if we look at concepts that we get from the earlier air sign, if we think of the symbol for Gemini is the Roman numeral 2, that's if you think about that, right? This must be some kind of powerful image for duality itself, you
Mm.
know? So air is about relationship of things, okay? Right? And we can see it easily from all of the air symbols, okay? But we can see it from Gemini, and we can see it from Libra, the balance scales, right? Now this is about how does this concept and this concept and this concept, and when we can see how two concepts they share something in common, all right, how good that feels.
Oh,
Oh wow, you know?
interesting. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm reading this conflict magazine. It's the new philosopher on conflict, and they were talking about marriage and how, you know, basically you find someone to have conflict with, and when people leave a marriage, then they go find another person to have conflict with. And like, I like what you're saying is like the scales are showing these two ideas, like kind of weighing. You're trying to find the center point of these two ideas. That's fascinating. Okay.
Yes.
So conflict is part of the love of Libra is two opposing viewpoints joined to become a creative force, or something.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
okay,
Yes. Yes.
okay. Now I want to present to you the ancient constellation for Libra, which was the Zdugon, which is the yoke between two oxen's necks. So, check this out. This is what I always think with Libra problems, like the kind of codependence that comes with Libra. So let's say you got two oxen and one of them's huge and one of them's tiny, and you yoke them together by the neck. What happens when they go plowing the field?
Yeah.
It's scary, man.
One of them gets, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I tell a very similar story if I'm talking about the seventh house. You know, the PG version is a seesaw, right, or a teeter totter. Okay, and I say, imagine being on a seesaw with someone that's twice your weight. Okay, It's no fun because you're just dangling up in the air, right? You can't do anything, right? Imagine being on the seesaw with someone that's half your weight, okay? Your butt is stuck on the ground, right? They can't move you, okay? That's
Wow.
the PG version, right? The PG-13 version, right? Is I say, like, I talk about this with Mars especially, you know? I say with Mars, you're either going to be the hunter or the prey, you know. And if you
Okay.
have Mars and you're with the right, if you have one person that has a strong Mars and one person that has a weak Mars, and you put them in a relationship, one will be the hunter, one will be the perp, one will be the victim, right? You
Oh,
a
totally. Oh
hundred
my
percent of the
God.
time, 100% of the time, it will show up.
Yeah,
Right?
it's abusive.
So
Well, I'm only quoting I'm air quotes because I'm that Mars person's not trying to be abusive. They just are stronger. Like, oops.
yeah. So it's funny. I just did a podcast before this, and this woman reached out and she was like, I reach out and I talk to famous athletes, you know, and so I Googled her and I was like, oh, okay, it's interesting lady. And so I agreed to do it. But I said, if I'm gonna do it, I need her birth information so I can talk about my app. So she sent me her information and she's Aries, 11th house Aries with Sun conjunct Mars. You know,
Wow.
and I was like, whoa, okay. And she had fifth house Libra moon. You know, and we started talking. You know, and she's trying to understand like what is this astrology stuff? How does it work? And I said, well, here's an example. You know, I said, there's my favorite image is a woman clothed. You know, looking into a mirror, and when she looks in the mirror, she sees her reflection of herself naked, you know, and that the chart can help you see who you really are, right? And that helps you be who you really are more. And I said, I look at your chart, right? And I imagine right on one side, inside of you, you have a warrior, okay? And on the other side, you have a princess, you know, and they're trying to figure out how to get along, you know? And she started laughing, you know, she started laughing, right? And later in the conversation, right, in the fifth house, Pluto opposing the sun, Mars. Okay, she talked about it's beautiful, right? Kind of we got into the story of I've been in abusive relationships and I don't feel like I'm a victim. I learned to stand up for myself, you know. And I
Mhm.
said, oh yeah, I said that theme in the movie where the woman gets abused and then she starts taking self-defense classes and she realizes that she's a badass. Okay,
Mm.
right? And then everyone has to get out of her way, right? And we laugh, right? We laugh together, right? A theme that we can all recognize in movies, especially if we're over 35, right? Something that she's experienced in her life. And because she could see the drama in it, right? It's an empowering story for her. To me, I was like, whoa, right? It's cool how this works.
Mm. Well, okay, well, first of all, I'm getting kind of jealous of this chick, and second of all, no, I'm just kidding. That was a Scorpio moment. Um, I was portraying a Scorpio on TV. Okay, so no, I like your seesaw. Back to the seesaw of Libra. Okay, so actually, one of the problems with Libra is if you connect to the wrong partner, right? It's like in the field, the auction in the field, like one person's pulling the other person along, and it's like these Libras who are like pathologically suffering through their connections is because they're like pulling someone through the fields and no one's getting anything done. And but if you put two oxen together the same size, like the fields get plowed and everyone's happy, and it's the same with the seesaw. Like it's funny that you and I are dancing the same exact concept. There is like
Yeah,
equality, or what we
yeah,
call parity, or equity, or there's these bigger concepts you could use in Libra, like equity is bigger than equality probably, but it's like, yeah, that's keeps the love of Venus alive in Libra, is like when we have like a dance and not like you know
yeah.
so
And part of the dance, and this gets us to Venus, okay, is I think of um what another way we get into this conversation. Libra Venus is about learning who to trust and how to trust, you know, and trusting the wrong people, right? Choosing the wrong people, right? It's kind of what you're talking about. But if we learn to trust the right people, all right, we're benefited from it. But how do we know who were the right people to trust? Okay.
mm,
And to me, this gets us to the Taurus side of Venus, right? And one of the things I like to think about the Taurus side of Venus is teaching us how to trust our bodies, right? I could be more specific and say gut, right, or nose, but but just keeping it general, learning how to trust our body, right? And advice I might give to a Taurus, right, is eat your favorite meal at least once a week. Spend some
Mm,
time in nature, do a little bit of yoga, right? Because the more we're in touch in a harmonious, positive way with our bodies, it's easier to receive the message of this feels good, this doesn't feel good, this feels good, this doesn't feel good. My teacher tells a brilliant story kind of with the Taurus and Libra sides of Venus. He talks about a friend of his who was a psychotherapist, very intelligent, and often intimidated a lot of men intellectually. And she met a guy, and intellectually they could connect, right? So as she thinks about her and this guy in her mind, what a beautiful couple, all the great conversations we'll have, right? We'll write books together, okay? This concept, okay? And then as they get closer, right, the first time they kiss, she notices something about the way he smells. It's not, it's just a little bit off. Okay. But if she stays in the mental concept of we're going to be great together and she ignores what her nose or what her body is telling her, something's going to be missing, right? It's going to lead to her trusting the wrong person, right? Where she learns to trust that gut instinct. How does my body feel around this person?
mm.
Okay. Right there, there's some deep, deep knowledge that we have access to all the way from the plant kingdom, right? About knowing what's good for us and what's not. It's built into our tissue.
That's a really good point. Okay, so just I'm going to dance back to Libra for 1 second about who to trust. Okay, so in the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, they say win-win or no deal. Basically, in connection, if like highly effective people connect only when it's a win-win, like both people win in this conversation, right? And that's one of the ways we know we can trust certain situations or commit to them is because both people will ultimately, I don't know, it's just a win-win. Okay, so that's a very Libra concept. Libra's more of a yang Venus where we're like,
It's
adhering.
kind of sexist. It's kind of a sexist comment.
Why?
Not for you, it's not. Okay. But because I 100% agree, right? Two men doing a business deal, right? And they both are in it to win. Okay. And they have somehow and magically they have the sensitivity to also know and appreciate what winning for the other person would be. Okay. Right. And again, to me, that takes a little bit of a stretch of the imagination because most of the guys I know that are the win guys, they they take the other person feeling like they want a little bit as them losing. Okay. But as an ideal, 100%, I agree. Right. I think we're working to get there. But what I see in with most women, right, is, and I could be totally generalizing here, right, is that their training at least is that them winning is the partner winning. So it can get confusing if we say win-win, where right we kind of shame women if they are thinking I need to win, right, whatever I need out of this relationship.
Mm.
Okay. Because I think if I wish it were like that. I mean, it's easy for me, right? But the one thing I tell my wife and all the women I've dated, right? Just tell me exactly what you want me to do. Lay it out, write it out, make it as obvious as possible.
Mm.
Please, right? Like I want you to win. Please, please, please.
Mm.
And even as I like, right, it takes them a while to trust, to trust it, because men aren't even taught to consider women winning, you know?
Well, as a Sun square Mars female, I have no problem. I like, well, but I always have to fight for my right to win. It's always like, now I'm a narcissist. Like anytime I succeed in astrology, people are like, you're a narcissist. It's like, oh my God. It's like anyone who's winning and it did something cool is now a narcissist. It's like, can you get rid of that contagious meme? It's just so stupid. Like, if I had to pick a pathology, I'd pick narcissism. I'd be like, I can do anything. I'm a narcissist, whatever. But I actually am not. But the point is I don't think anyone's a narcissist for all our charts, but the point is you're right. Like some people get shamed for winning or wanting to win,
Yeah,
right? But that's why I like to hang out with other oxen who are winners, because then when we walk next to each other plowing the fields, we're just chilling. But like if I
yeah,
worked next to somebody who's like, you're a narcissist, I'm like, all right, no one's winning. Like I
yeah,
can't win.
yeah.
If I
You got
won, I
it.
lost, like
You got it. So, right, all this talk about narcissists, my advice to narcissists, as soon as your partner calls you a narcissist, leave, you know, right?
That,
What I'd say is I never want to be with someone who would tolerate being in a relationship with a narcissist. So I'm
yeah.
out of here.
Well, I love how all that stuff gets flung around as soon. It's like I'm mad at you. You're a narcissist. But like the last 10 years when you were helping me rock life, then you were fine. It's like people just pathologize each other when they're mad. But let's go to Taurus there with win-wins for a second. I was thinking about this. So you're talking about adhering to food and nature, not people, with Venus and Taurus, which is fascinating because it would be like adhering to food, like win-win or no deal would be like if I eat something and it makes me sick, like I'm not gonna commit to that food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
I would go to the point if I eat this food and it doesn't make me feel. That's why I say eat your favorite food. Because like a good tourist experiment, right, is you take your favorite food and you really slow down, take a couple of deep breaths, get into your body, right? Feel your body, take the first bite, and allow yourself to savor it, right? And then take the second bite, allow yourself to savor it, okay, and keep doing that. Typically what you'll notice is after the third or fourth bite, right, you'll put it down.
Oh yeah, that's the three bite rule. I just learned that because I
Yeah.
got hypnotized about food, and she was like, we only taste something for the first three bites, and then you're just eating it mindlessly, essentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But right. This is what we do in relationships, right? The first three dates, we're like, this is how it's always gonna be, and then we're just mindlessly we're just mindlessly going on
whatever.
after
I'm
the
like, is
time.
this still a win-win? That's what I'm thinking. Oh shit, that's funny. Well, well, let's see. Well, so Venus and Taurus, Earth is interesting because it's everywhere. Like you can go out in nature, step out your door and nature's there. You can go down to the kitchen, there's food there. But with the more Libra version, like people are kind of a moving object. It's like, they're here, they're there, they got a whole chart, whatever. But nature's more serene and always there. That's very Earth.
Yeah. But also like our bodies are always here.
Oh,
It's like wherever
interesting.
we go, right? Our bodies are here and we got to deal with them. Are they comfortable? Are they not? Are they hungry? Are they
Yeah.
tired?
I'm gonna count all the good points you make. Oh no, I filled up my paper. I'm not going to be
Well,
obsequious or fawning though, but I do like all the
well,
good points you
I
make.
try not to. I try not to open my mouth unless I have a good point to make.
Whoa, you're very parsimonious with your words, whatever. Um,
Not my
is your
words, but with
Gemini
my
entertained by big words?
um in private. In private, I'd say my Mercury and Taurus is intimidated by big words.
Okay.
But in private, I'll look at the etymology. I'll break
You're
it
looking
down,
up
but
words.
publicly.
Oh my God, I should show you my dictionary. This thing. You can really have some private time with this thing. This is a dictionary.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's full of Greek words, but okay, so let's
Oh,
talk
I
about
get
the
it.
cultural differences about Venusianism between like African American culture and white culture. Like, how are these expressed differently?
All right, one example, and I'll just gracefully, gently slide this kind of into the middle of the table. Okay, is Venus rules the hair. All right. So, so if we think of images of beauty in relation to white hair, black hair, Hispanic, all kinds of different kinds of hairs, and right,
Wow.
and kind of what the attribution, right, how we think about and it's kind of edgy, but just being African American, right, growing up in America, it's like we're the minority, and so a lot of our sense of style and fashion is related to the majority, you know, and a fashion in African American women kind of up and down, but having long hair, you know,
Yeah.
having long hair and weaves, but that's everyone now. But again, before it wasn't, right? That it's kind of crossed over, right? And now, right now, you never know whose hair is whose. Okay.
Yeah.
Um. So
Oh yeah, I've
that's
heard that. Sorry.
no.
No, I've definitely heard that you know, in cultural studies and comparative literature they talk a lot about that, about how the, you know, Anglicization of black women's hair, where they're trying to have white looking hair, whether they straighten their hair or they use relaxers or they put in weaves. You know, I would argue that their hair is just amazing. Like they like the braiding, oh my God. Like I, you know, white people can't even get braids like, you know, black people. Like I think I just want to honor that there are certain things about black hair that is way superior to white hair. I mean, if
Well,
we're
so not. I don't want to talk about superior or not, but what's coming. I mean, what you've made obvious is that even if we're talking about Venus or any of the planets, we can't take away the physical, literal material that we are working with, right? Is if we look at hair that's more Afrocentric, more Eurocentric, it's different textures. So right, there should be different images of beauty applied to them because they're different,
Yeah,
you
if
know.
we look at it from that teleology perspective, we take genetic, culture, climate, and astrology. If you deny the genetic vessel, the parent plant that the person came from, it would be like, I'm going to take this squash plant and treat it like a watermelon, and then, you know, make it like, I'm going to make it more like a watermelon to make it more beautiful. It's like, that's working against nature, actually. Where it's like, if we took the squash plant, we're like, I'm going to make the most beautiful squash plant out of this squash plant. That's a little bit more. I don't know. I get what you're saying, where it's like, why do we veer from the natural vessel so much sometimes? You know?
Well, this is a Venus. This to me, this in this day and age, if we ask a Venus question, this is gonna have to come up. But this is we say veer away, and then we were just talking about Earth is always there, the body is always here, right? And I think of a Taurus kind of beauty, right? Someone who's comfortable in their skin, right? Is they're comfortable with their own natural type of beauty, and you'll feel it when you're around them, right? Again, they might not be conventionally attractive, but when you're around them, you just feel more relaxed and at ease and less self-conscious. This is what I noticed again compared to when I lived in Southern California. Every time I fly into Portland, you know, I think of that very tourist. Like I just feel a level of self-consciousness just like disappear, you know, right?
Mm,
And something that's just like, and it's even like I get almost kind of turned on, activated by it, just in my body more,
mm,
you know. So I think that's a big part of it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I actually think we fault people a little bit too much for veering outside of their cultural lines with beauty things. It's like people do this all the time, like, and I think it has to do with the chart and how much they want to fidget with. Like, if some girl has a Venus Jupiter Pluto conjunction in her chart and she gets obsessed with beauty, I want her to be able to try all the hairs, like the weaves and the braids and the extensions, and like she might be fidgeting so much with beauty that it's like just, you know, her culture doesn't offer enough. That would be like going outside your culture for inspiration. I don't think that's
Yep.
appropriating whiteness per se. It's like celebrating, you know, a white style perhaps, but you know, I don't know, we could also say that a lot of African women look awesome with their weaves. Like it's just a super Venusian chart will want to do all the beauties, and maybe throughout their life they want to have like 30 styles of hair. And you know, it's like I had students tell me that when I braid my hair, because I do a lot of braids, and I think that's a Gemini thing, is like I'm constantly braiding and put my boyfriend's hair in Viking braids and things like that, that I'm like appropriating braids from African culture. And I'm like, you can't take braiding away from me because African people are bomb at braiding. Like I also have hair that needs braiding. You know what I mean? Like so that
Well,
bothers.
but I think if we right, if we get stuck in that conversation, it's like we're disgracing Venus, right? And to me, the beauty in that conversation is where I would go is I'm honoring Venus, right? Is whatever, right? this appeals to my sense of beauty. And thank God that other cultures are willing to express this because it's not available in mine. Right. And I think, right, as the I'm feeling like the voice of religious freedom, okay, talking about the planets as the gods and goddesses. Religious freedom is I should have the freedom to worship Venus any way I see fit.
Damn.
You know, because the truth is if we don't do a good job worshiping Venus, we are stressed out. You know, and I think of like I think of all the planets is what is their function? One of the functions of Venus is to raise our vibration because as soon as we move into the appreciation of something, our vibrations go up. And this idea of making any kind of expression of Venus wrong, okay? Ooh, right, to me that's dangerous. That's
Yeah.
dangerous. I think if anything we should be doing the opposite, and there is a movement in that direction. But as I think of honoring Venus, especially I feel the urge to go back to Taurus, you know, of the origin is everyone inside of themselves knowing exactly right what feels good to them, you know. It becomes like I'm telling a tour story. You know, I did a commercial once, and we had to bring our dogs because they were part of the commercial. And the co-hosts I was with, our dogs had never met each other. And the first thing the dogs did is they smelled each other's crotches. You know, and the joke is if humans did that, we'd probably make better decisions in partners. You know, because right, because there's something that our bodies know, okay,
Yeah.
that our current minds have forgotten, and I think how to relax, how to calm down, okay, how to come back to equilibrium, how to connect to the earth, okay. I think
Well,
it's Venus.
okay, I have to address this one. Okay, so the culture and climate we grow up in does affect our expression of Venus. Okay, so you know how there's white girls who grow up in, African American pockets of town, like, who grow up in the hood or whatever, and all of a sudden those girls have braids and it's like they're expressing black expressions of beauty because that all their friends are African and like and their friends braid their hair and stuff like that, and so they're all fidgeting with the energy of Venus in the culture that they're in. And so I think that's kind of what happens on the other side too, is like we just get this impetus of energy from within and then we apply it to what things we have out here, like you said that a few weeks ago, right? And so what
Yep.
about that?
Well, I think we can say we apply it. Another way to think of it is we magnetize it, you know? Because if you think, sometimes I'll describe the planets inside of us as powerful magnets, you know? Like our Venus is magnetizing all of the Venus stuff in our environment, but it can only manifest or magnetize the Venus stuff that is in our environment, you know? And I imagine someone with the powerful Venus who's in prison, right? Tucked away in a cave, right? And every morning, right, there's a beautiful like little speck of a shadow that comes in, you know, and that one speck of a shadow like sends them into ecstasy, right?
Oh,
Because that's the only Venus that they can pull from in that environment, right? But they notice it. So, and I think if we recognize and connect to, right, the strength of our planets and what we are magnetizing or attracting from the environment, then like light bulbs go off. And so if someone, again, a white little girl grows up in an African American community with a powerful Venus, right? The only, unless her mom is buying her Vogue, right, buying her the right magazines, the only thing her Venus has to pull from are the things in her environment.
yeah. And that's beautiful. I mean, I think this is why you and I are calling out to astrologers to include the cultural layer in the growth of a human. Because I think without this cultural
Oh,
layer, we're kind of missing something, of just like how does
yeah.
a person actually grow? And it has a lot to do with what's available. It's like I love what you just did. Okay, the exercise of putting a chart in prison is actually a beautiful exercise. If we tucked this chart away into one room with, it had to, how would it express its aspects? And I think, have you ever been locked up?
Not for more than a couple hours.
Okay, because I was locked up for a month when I had my schizophrenia attack or whatever. I'm on meds, don't worry. But my chart is schizophrenic. I mean, it's got a moon square Neptune in Pisces. But point is, when I was locked up for a month, you should have seen me. I was myself in there. I was making ephemerises. I couldn't get to my ephemeris, so I just started like making my own. And I was like drawing all these charts and like I kept coloring and there's all this art coming out and it's like I used whatever was available in that environment to and it
Yeah,
looks a lot like
yeah.
me, but it was a little bit more lo-fi and but it's interesting to lock yourself up for a month.
I was kind of locked up. I did a reality show called Big Brother, and I was locked up in a house for a month with 10 celebrities. Oh my God. And it was kind of the same thing, but I was lucky, right? Because usually we didn't have, for me, I'm a voracious reader. Like I have to read. And we couldn't bring any book except for the Bible. So I was reading the Bible,
Wow.
and but they allowed an iPad so I could look at people's charts. And that was the only like saving grace. I learned to play chess a little bit, but like you said, a different environment, it manifested a different me.
Yeah.
Cool.
God, that's so cool. Environment studies. Like, I mean, I know you and I just are having a conversation, but this is actually mind blowing for astrologers, right? What I hope is if we can talk for a while, then by next NORWAC, this whole cultural era will be part of the fabric of astrology.
Oh,
It I don't know that anyone's really delved in at the level that we're doing.
it's funny that they haven't, because just since we've been talking, it's been jumping out in everything that I talk about relative to astrology. So I did a podcast yesterday where it was really brief and it was more humor than serious astrology, but I was talking to Stormy Daniels about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's chart. Again,
Okay.
it was more for humor, but the synastry between Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump is just insane, insane. So we got to talk about it a little bit. And so, preparation in one of my classes, I put up Stormy's chart, and I didn't tell anyone whose chart it was. And everyone assumed, because of the nature of the chart, they assumed it was the chart of a man. And then when I said this is a chart of a woman, it was fascinating how much the interpretation changed. And I think for astrologers to play this game, right? If this is a man's chart, if this is a woman's chart, if this is a chart of any ethnicity, any race, how would I look at it differently? And we
That's a
have
good
charts to look at, so all of us can play that game, and it's really, like, things will jump out to you, and it's kind of cool.
Wait, did you invent that game?
I don't know if someone else invented it before, but it just popped into my mind as something.
No, I've never seen that before.
My teacher does say, like, when he'll say, if when we're trying to get someone to tap into Uranus, the planet Uranus, that um he'll have someone imagine they were born into at a different time or into a different culture, to help us get a sense of what things we've taken on culturally that we think are really a part of who we are, but actually aren't. And I think that exercise can help with that too.
Well, Ptolemy in the Tetrabiblos, he talks about this. He basically says like just like a doctor should know your environment you're in, your family situation, and all this stuff, so should the astrologer. And so it goes back thousands of years. I just don't know that there's a lot of, waves in astrology, evolutionary, psychological or whatever. And it's like you and I are kind of on this wave of like teleological astrology, which is like development based astrology or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's our generation. I don't know. We're working our Saturn square Neptune transit. We're like pulling out the nits of just sadness and creating a dreamlike experience for our generation. That's my prediction.
Oh, it's our gift. Uh,
Yeah.
it's our gift. And I think, for me, my measurements, that we're in the age of Aquarius, and so I think the religion of the Aquarian age is going to be astrological, because to me, again, growing up with the Bible, I feel like my chart is like my own personal Bible about what's right for me. And my chart says yes to premarital sex.
Well, your time is a gift, Ricky, and I understand that you're giving me and us your time, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, this is awesome, right? This is a gift. be able to talk this way for an hour a week is, again, it really is a true gift. So thank you for the
Are
opportunity.
you seventh housing me right now? No, I'm just kidding.
Venus. We started off talking about Venus. I'm
Well, I'm committing to
showing
Wednesdays at
love.
2. All right. Well, I will see you next week where we can move on to another planet. We got another one done today.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
That's wonderful.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Ricky. Bye.
Thank you.